Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all those in attendance. Apologies for the delay. Hopefully you can all hear me well. My name is Matthew Heise. I'm with DataRobot. The delay was caused as multiple people, as I mentioned in the chat, had to ultimately install the GoToWebinar platform. But thankfully, we've got a lot of the attendees already in, and we expect a few more to come inbound. But and on that note, I'd like to hand it over to Melina. Melina, go ahead.
Thank you. So also from my side, hello and welcome to this webinar. In this webinar, we would like to show you how you can use AI, machine learning, and search to improve your procurement and supply chain. So my name, as mentioned, my name is Melina. I'm a customer success engineer working at Digital Improvements, and we are a certified partner of DataRobot and ThoughtSpot. And together with me on this webinar are Lucas Innig. He's a customer-facing data scientist at DataRobot, and Matthew, the account executive at DataRobot, as well as Patrick Sifford. He is working for ThoughtSpot as a sales director. And just as a side note, before we start, we will have time planned for questions at the end of the webinar. So whenever you have questions, please use the control panel and the questions tab where you can add your questions. Should you have problems with this questions tab, you could also use the chat tab if this one works better. So then, what's the goal of this webinar? So after today's webinar, you will hopefully know how machine learning and AI can boost efficiency, save costs, and optimize processes in supply chain and procurement, and how leveraging search and AI can deliver insights in your data, and how machine learning can be used for demand predictions without having hundreds of data scientists in your organization. And you will be experiencing how this can be achieved in 2 live demos, where Lucas will run through the DataRobot demo, and I will show you a ThoughtSpot live demo. Additionally, Matthew and Patrick will show you some use cases to give you insights in what other customers are doing with ThoughtSpot and DataRobot. Who is Digital Improvements? So Digital Improvements is a next generation analytics solution provider, and our mission is to support our customers on their journey towards a data-driven digital future, and to help them take decisions faster and based on better information. And to achieve this, we collaborate with technology partners such as ThoughtSpot and DataRobot, and we combine their strength to industry solutions. And in today's webinar, we will focus on the upper part of the slide, and we would like to show you how ThoughtSpot and DataRobot can support your supply chain process, and also how the combination of these solutions can really boost the efficiency and cost effectiveness. And with this, that was already it from the introduction part and about digital improvements. I would now like to hand over to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Melina, for the handover and the brief introduction to digital improvements. For the purposes of this webinar, Lucas, Melina, myself, and Patrick thought it would be most appropriate to present this as a role-playing exercise. So for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be playing the role of Matthew, not responsible for as an account executive, but my role will be around supply chain demand management. Lucas will be a data scientist, and Melina will also play the role of head of supply chain. Now, my responsibility as the supply chain demand manager really lies throughout not just planning and procurement, but throughout the entire supply chain, from planning and procurement to distribution and logistics. My responsibility, and specifically my focus, lies at a global level. So ultimately, in other words, scale. My focus is on being data-driven, and not just specifically around descriptive or looking at historical data and current data, but also planning ahead, right? And not just planning ahead for the near-term future in terms of 24 hours, but really forecasting out how the business will grow throughout or stay level throughout the next upcoming weeks, months, and even potentially years. So ultimately, my focus is how much are we going to sell in the next week for the purposes of this demonstration, because subsequently, I'd also like to understand how much are we going to spend over the next week as well. And for the purposes of this effort and this conversation, I don't have a data science or machine learning background. So I've asked Lucas from our company to ultimately jump onto the call, jump into the conversation, and highlight and help me build a better demand forecast, because ultimately a bad demand forecast costs various amounts of money throughout the entire supply chain. Lucas, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I've heard you guys have gotten a new solution called DataRobot, and would love for you to walk us through the solution, or walk me through the solution, as well as also really specifically help me build a forecast for a couple stores, specifically in Louisville, maybe even Detroit.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to do that. So let me just share my screen. There we go. All right. So yeah, thank you for pinging that data across to me, Matthew. That was very thoughtful. So the data we look at here, as I can see, is we have several stores. It's daily data, and we have the sales figures for this historical data. We also have some information about how many employees that we have working in the store, how many customers, what type of marketing information here, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this into DataRobot, and I'm going to quickly run a few machine learning models that will then help us to extract all of the patterns out of this data set, and then we should be able to forecast that into the future.
So one of the questions I had, Lucas, from my perspective, I sent over the data, but I wasn't able to send over a seasonality or holiday data. How would you include that? Maybe if you can touch base on that as well, that'd be very helpful.
I am able to put calendar events as well into the data, so I can actually put that as a separate step. So let me actually find that data in my catalog here. So I did tag it. There we go. That's the data. And I'm just going to create a project with this. So this is typically the first step when we use DataRobot. Is we take any data set, we upload it into the platform, and DataRobot is analyzing the data, looking at the columns, trying to figure out what do we have in that data. Is it something that looks like a number, something that looks like text, or as a date, of course? And once this is done, we get this overview here where, again, we see this is exactly the same data as before. We have the store name, we have the date, we have the sales figures. And I can quickly check the distribution here just to be sure that everything looks okay. It does. So with that, I know that we want to predict the sales. So I'm going to just put that in as a target. And now, of course, we want to make use of the time series functionality. So let me quickly switch that on. So I'm going into the time-aware modeling, select the date feature, go to the time series part. And now it actually asks me, hey, it looks like there's multiple different series in this data set. It's not only one store, it's actually many. So how can I tell them apart? And this is indeed by the name of the store. So I'm just going to set that. Now, one of the questions it's going to ask me is how far into the future do I want to predict? And this is actually a question I need to ask Matthew now. Matthew, how far do we actually need to look forward?
I think for the time being right now would be incredibly helpful for us in the supply chain team is just the next 7 days. But going forward, I think in this conversation down the line, we'd like to focus more on a 28-day basis as well. But for right now, let's stick to 7.
All right, I could put the 28 here, but indeed, let's keep it short and use the 7 days. Now, one other thing I need to do here is some of these features I actually do know if they're going to happen in the future. For example, I know the store size, that's not going to change. I also know these destination events. These are just calendar events, basically once or twice a year, we will have some sort of destination. There's also marketing information. Matthew, do you know if the marketing team actually sends us their campaigns before they happen?
Yes, the marketing team does send us their campaigns. I do know that they fluctuate quite frequently given the trends of what's happening out in the external market. But for now, yes, they do send us the marketing data.
Cool. All right, so I take these 3 features then, and I'm going to flag them as known in advance, meaning that the models will actually be able to use this information. So I'm going to say, give me the prediction for Thursday, and I also give you the information on Thursday we are running this marketing campaign. All right, with that out of the way, let me just quickly double check the way that DataRobot here is setting up the training schedule, always training on historic data and then validating on data in the future. That's fine, I can deal with that. Then one thing I wanted to put in is, as you said, the calendar. So I have the option to import a calendar here as well. And I'm going to take one from the catalog that I prepared earlier. So this is just a list of several holidays like Christmas, like Easter, that I have preset in here, so that again the models will be able to learn these patterns. Are we coming up to Christmas? Are my turkey sales going up? That kind of thing. So this is being verified here, and once this is done, we are able to hit that start button here at the top. There we go. And I'm going to do exactly that. And what's happening now is that DataRobot is going to take a lot of the work that I would have to do without a platform like DataRobot for me. So looking at all of the data, splitting it in the right way, deriving these features. So these are time series features that take into account the trends, the seasonalities, etc. All so that we can have a more accurate prediction on what's actually going to happen 7 days out.
So Lucas, just quickly from my understanding, forgive me, given my law and data science and machine learning background, but obviously from an external perspective, we hear often about deep learning models. Is that exactly what we're going to be building now? These deep learning models, neural networks?
We are going to look at deep learning models. We are also going to look at other types of machine learning models. So deep learning, for those not familiar with them, they work particularly well in some narrow aspects. For example, image recognition or audio, that kind of thing. Also on text analysis, they tend to work really, really well. On time series, they can work quite well, but there's no guarantee. And because we know that there's no guarantee, we are actually going to build many, many different types of machine learning models here. Some very classic, like ARIMA or linear regression type models, some more advanced, like a random forest, and then some kind of these fairly new type of models, like those deep learning, LSTM models, etc. So we are going to see all of those being trained and evaluated, and then we can see which actually did work best on this particular data set. And that's kind of the crucial point here. Every data set is different. We don't know what's going to work best before we actually try it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We just try many, many different things. And in the interest of time, I'm actually going to let this here go away from this, move to a project that is already completed, which I've done just earlier. And let's see what the output of that could look like, just in the interest of time. In reality, the process is going to take maybe 30 minutes. So going here, this is the final output now of the machine learning process. And as we can see, there's a long, long list of models that all have been trained. And we can see the variety of the different models. So there's some fairly simple linear regression models. We see those kind of XGBoost models. These are fairly complex tree-based algorithms. But to your question, Matthew, we do have this particular model here, which is a Keras model. Keras is one of those deep learning libraries. And that is indeed an LSTM deep learning type approach. And we see it is not at the top of the leaderboard, but it's also not, you know, it does perform well, but it doesn't perform as well as the best models that we see. We always know how well our algorithms have performed by looking at the validation performance, so the performance that was achieved on data that the model has never seen before. To illustrate that again, we train our models on this blue part here and then validate on this kind of future part. So the model has never seen this data, and therefore we can be certain that our model is also going to extrapolate well into the actual future. Now, I, as a data scientist, of course, I would like to know, well, what is actually happening behind the scenes here? Is it like a black box model? If I open any of these up, I can actually see a lot of information here, things like pre-processing steps, other feature engineering steps, etc. And I can dig deeper. I can go to the documentation and really read up on, hey, what's happening here behind the scenes. with this particular model in this case. Now, this is of course optional. I don't have to do that. What I really I think was more interesting to me, and where I also need to check with Matthew, is having a look at the insights that are being generated. So again, I'm opening this up, and now I'm going to hit the Evaluate tab. And the first thing we see here is now the accuracy over time that this model has achieved. So let's scroll down a bit. What we see is on the validation data, so on the unseen data, we see those predictions in blue, and we see the actual values in orange. Now we can compare how well our predictions have worked. We see this huge spike here on the 15th of February. It was well captured by our algorithm, so I can be happy about that. See, there's a certain seasonality here, like a weekly pattern that continues to go, but it's not always perfect. So for example, here I see that there was a spike on the actual values, but my model didn't quite capture it. Now, I can, of course, think about, well, how can I make this better? And this is exactly why I would now say, hey, what happened on the 29th of March? Maybe this was a holiday that we didn't capture in my holiday calendar, and maybe it was something else. And we can together, Matthew and I together, can have a look at this and really try to figure out what actually happened on that day.
So Lucas, from my perspective, and again, forgive me for asking the question, but as a non-data scientist, to just put it into terms where, to relate whether I understand you correctly. So basically what we've done within here in the modeling process, if we've taken the data set, the historic data set that we're going to train our machine learning algorithms on, and divvied it up into different parts, and one of those parts of the data set was never used to compare the trained model against that data to make sure that it's performing at a high level, correct? Am I understanding it correct?
Correct. If you take all of your data that you have and you just cut off the last part, right, the most recent part in that data, that's the part we are currently looking at.
So that's how I can know that and trust that this model is performing at that level.
Exactly. This would be as if exactly. It's the first time, so to say, that this model actually sees completely new data. Yeah. All right. One more thing. So I can obviously look at more things here, but actually I'm quite happy with this. Then the next part that's always important is to try to understand the model, kind of try to open up the black box that people do often say these machine learning models are. And one of those is the feature impact. So out of all of those features that or the columns in my original data, I can see now which of those actually had the most influence in making good predictions. And maybe not surprisingly, the target itself, the sales themselves, they actually have the highest influence. And that's just to say what happened yesterday or what happened last week is a very good predictor on what's going to happen next. Right, so my average sales over the last 7 days are probably a very good predictor on my sales on what's today, Tuesday, so my sales for Wednesday. But there's other things as well that then, of course, help making it even better. For example, those destination events, they don't happen in the recent past, so we really have to learn this. But if I know now, well, maybe on Friday, one of these destination events is going to happen, I can tell my model that, and it's then also influencing the prediction in a positive way.
So Lucas, what's interesting to me from a data, from someone who understands the data, is that the marketing and the percentage of promotional data points are not necessarily massive influencing factors for the prediction outcome. Am I reading that correctly here?
Yeah, correct. So the marketing does have an influence, but it's not the most important one. And I guess we could try to investigate this further. But for now, we can just trust that indeed there is a slim influence of marketing. But as I've seen from the data, there's actually some marketing happening all the time. So it's only the difference in the campaign, I guess, which has a slight influence. But given that we are looking at the overall sales of the store and some amount of marketing is always happening, I'm actually not too surprised with that.
Mm-hmm. Because that actually, combats basically our internal perception before, where marketing is incredibly relevant to how the sales are going to increase or decrease over the course of the next couple of days, months, etc. So it's incredibly impactful for us to understand that more thoroughly. Now, do these data points, if you were to retrain in, let's say, 2 to 3 months, would these alter, or is this kind of the same every time?
We would hope that they are going to be consistent, and indeed, typically they are, unless there's a big change in what's happening, right? So think of the effect that we've seen during COVID, when that first started, somewhere around March, April time. Of course, now all of a sudden the whole behavior looks very, very different. So it is very important to retrain the models and make sure that they are working well during the COVID time. And in that case, I would not expect this to look exactly like that, right? I would expect significant changes, but during normal times, indeed, typically you do see slight fluctuations because the world just changes over time slightly, but in reality, it should be fairly stable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right. One other thing that I want to have a look at is also for some of the predictions that we make, for example, those big spikes that we've seen, we can give ourselves some explanations for those. So really having a look at for any prediction, really, in this case, it's only an example of the highest and the lowest few, but I can get this for every single prediction that I make. I want to see, well, what's the main reason for this prediction to be so high or so low? And just taking this example here, the Louisville store, on the 15th of February, so we've seen that before, has a very high prediction, and now the main reason for that is indeed this destination event has the flag yes, so there is something going on here. This is this kind of marketing event, and that is the main driver for this prediction to be so high. Not unexpected, but it's good to confirm. There's a few other reasons here that I can see. Things like day of the week, for example, the last 7 days average sales, they obviously influence the sales, etc. So a good way of really, firstly, double checking that your predictions make sense, and secondly, I guess trying to figure out if there's mistakes.
So Lucas, if I were to provide this to management, I would get the explanation for every individual prediction. Is that correct? Am I understanding you there correctly?
Yeah, that is correct. You can get that. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Awesome. Now, the next step is, of course, I want to give these predictions over to Melina for further analysis. So what I need to do is I need to take my model that is recommended for deployment here, and I need to make predictions. So one thing that I've done already is just to quickly get the predictions for indeed the next 7 days as an extract here. So I can quickly have a look at the preview just to double check that everything works well. Matthew, from your perspective, do you think this is sensible that the pattern continues like this?
That seems quite sensible from my perspective, yes. Would love
Excellent.
to understand the more details, and obviously I'm more curious about Louisville specifically, if you can go to that.
Let's see, it's this one here. There we go. So it does seem to ramp up quite a bit.
Yeah, expected.
Good.
Awesome. Thank
Excellent.
you.
All right. So next step is to take this model now, because this was a fairly manual way of making predictions, and pushing this model into a deployment. So what I'm going to do is I say deploy my model, and just going to hit that create deployment button. And what's happening now is that we take this exact machine learning model, we move it to a dedicated prediction server, where we now have a REST API running, so we can hit that model with data to get predictions out. As we can see, there's a few integrations as well available, so we can hook that up to Snowflake, for example. And if I did that, I would be able to push those predictions into a Snowflake database for them to be consumed further. And with that, unless you have any more questions, I'm going to give it over to Melina.
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Lucas. I think that gives me a quite valid and great understanding of what's possible here with DataRobot and the solution for you guys in terms of forecasting. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into long-term forecasts down the line.
Excellent. Thank you.
So thank you for this demo, and I would just jump to my role. So I'm again not Melina anymore as a customer success engineer, but now I am the head of supply chain. And I will quickly tell you who I am, how my working style is, what my problems currently are, and with the solution of ThoughtSpot, how it could look like and how I could easily analyze my data. So as mentioned, my name is Melina. I'm the head of supply chain. I'm working in the organization already for 10 years now. And I'm a very structured and well-organized person who often needs to travel around the world, and therefore I'm always pretty busy and don't really have a lot of time to prepare for my meeting. But as I am quite fact-driven, I would like to take my decisions based on the data, and I would also like to prepare for these meetings. But as currently I don't really have access to the data I need at the time I need it, which is a bit frustrating, as I can't even answer some basic questions without waiting days or sometimes even weeks for a report. And what are my questions I want to answer? As an example, I would like to know which of the suppliers are delivering on time and which of the suppliers are delivering in a good quality, or how the spend has developed by product group or by over time. And also, as Matthew mentioned before, I'm also interested to see how the spend developed or how the spend will develop in the next weeks, days, or even months. So right now I'll just jump into the demo. So you've now seen my my problems. I will jump into the ThoughtSpot platform. What you can see here is at the top here a search bar, which is actually one of the strengths of ThoughtSpot. So I don't have to go to the BI or analytics department to ask for a report that answer my questions. I could just type into the search bar. Before I do this, I would like to show you one of the reports which have been pre-built, which I could build by myself or which can be pre-built and saved. However, these might answer some of my questions. As you can see here, I can see how much was been spent or ordered yearly. I can see some information about specific products. However, it doesn't exactly answer my question. So what I do is I press the search bar and I just type what I want to answer. It works a bit like Google. You type your questions, you get your answer. The difference is in Google, you get thousands of answers, and in a business context, you should just get one, the correct one. So I want to know this about the spend by product group. So this is why I just start typing spend by product group. And let's say I want to add top 14 to filter this. And now ThoughtSpot has just immediately visualized my data. And now I'm actually responsible, and I'm interested in this specific product group. And let me analyze this further. I want to now know which suppliers do we have within this product group. So I can drill down and type in supplier, and now the data is kind of drilled down or dig deeper into this product group, where you can see we have two suppliers. This is the Interglobe and the Zinc Offshore company, where we order much more at the Interglobe supplier. And as mentioned before, I would like to know if these suppliers are delivering on time and in good quality. So for the quality, I would just add rejected. So I want to see how much was rejected for the supplier. And let me change the chart type. So ThoughtSpot normally tries to figure out the best fit visualization. However, if you disagree, you can always change the chart type. So what we can see here is that the Zinc Offshore company is actually, so the quality is brilliant, but also, even though it looks a bit that the quality is worse, it looks like it is still pretty good. So it's only 0.07% rejected. And also check this in the tabular view. So this is fine, I think. So let us have a look at the on-time delivery. So I just deleted the rejected, and I will add the on-time delivery. Again, quickly change the chart type. Oh, this is interesting. So again, so the Zinc Offshore company, where we don't really order a lot within this product group, is delivering on time all the time. However, the Interglobe supplier is only delivering on time 50%. I think that's interesting, and I will save this insight on a pinboard. I will just create one that I can use afterwards. And I now want to know more about the Interglobe supplier. So let me see. I'll just spend, and as I want to filter for this supplier, I'll just add interglobe. I want to know how much we've spent on a monthly basis. As you can see, in 2018, we've quite spent a lot with the supplier, but it's more or less constant. We're ordering regularly since 6 years. I will also save this answer on my pinboard. And now, as a last question, I actually want to know very generally, I want to find insights about different products, how much we've spent with different products. And let's say I want to filter it for this year. And yeah, let's include last year as well. So we see how much we've spent for all of the products for this and last year. And as you can see, the chart is pretty crowded. It's pretty different to find insights. I could drill down, but yeah, I think it's not that easy. So this is why I could use the AI engine of ThoughtSpot. I would just hit analyze with the default settings. And what is happening now is ThoughtSpot is analyzing this data, which is within this search, and it's trying to drill down in the data to find correlations or trends or outliers. It's all based on the historical data, which is in ThoughtSpot, and it is creating a pinboard with all the insights. So let us have a look. It has finished. Yeah, it has. So this is what could help me a lot as well. So as I can see here, there's one specific product or this order number who has significantly higher sales. This might be interesting. I could analyze this further. Let me save it on my pinboard as well. I'll scroll down a bit to see if there are other kinds of insights as well. This one is interesting as well. So there is another product which kind of was delivered on time mostly until July, but then it started to be delivered quite unreliably, and especially in February, everything was delivered late. So I will save this again. It could be interesting to see who the suppliers were and why they have delivered late. We've also have a trend in here where we see one specific product, the on-time delivery is trending downwards. So I'll just save this as well. So now I'm ready for my meeting. I could have a look at the pinboard that I've created. Just open it. I could now present, and I could directly use this my pinboard as a basis for the meetings I have. So I'm able to prepare very quickly for a meeting. The data is still interactive, so I could drill down on any chart. And now let me go back. So now as we've seen before, so Matthew was interested in how the spend has developed, how the spend will develop in the next days, and I'm actually interested in this as well. So we could also have a look at this in ThoughtSpot as Lucas has saved it in Snowflake. So I want to know sales by store. And first, let us have a look at historical data, at daily. So we see all the stores, how much we sold the last 3 weeks. And if we want to add the next 7 days, so the prediction from Lucas, we can see it here. So here is the Louisville store it's actually, where's the Louisville store? Purple. So we see as well that for the Louisville store, so the trend is going upwards, similar to what or the same as to what Lucas has shown in the prediction preview as well. So this was it from the ThoughtSpot demo, and you can see I could very easily visualize historical data, but also the predictions from Lucas. With this, I will hand over back to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Melina. And I think that covers our role play component of this webinar. For the remaining 5 to 10 minutes, we wanted to discuss use cases or examples of customers leveraging the technologies of DataRobot and ThoughtSpot. For the DataRobot perspective, I wanted to highlight 3 scenarios. We've got Lenovo, Stanley Black & Decker, and unfortunately an unreferenceable customer as they see this as a competitive advantage, but as a North American retailer that's one of the top 10 worldwide in terms of revenue and size. Lenovo came to DataRobot as a customer very early on with the mindset of focusing on one specific use case, which is around demand forecasting on a unit basis, where they had begun to tackle this problem in a do-it-yourself component and an approach, but ultimately soon thereafter recognized that with the power of automation and the power of transparency of DataRobot, they were able to build models at a much faster rate, deploy them much quicker, and actually improve the accuracy of the performance of these models. And subsequently, with the simplicity of DataRobot, empower more users to build machine learning models and automated time series machine learning models as well. Stanley Black & Decker took a little bit of a different approach than Lenovo in the sense that they wanted to really focus on becoming AI driven, on not just tackle one use case, but multiple use cases right off the start. They adopted what we call a minimum viable modeling strategy and ultimately recognized that they were going to make the most compounding impact on their business throughout the supply chain by applying machine learning and AI models throughout the supply chain. So ultimately, a very aggressive approach where they weren't just focusing on demand forecasting, but also predicting delay time in the logistics and distribution area, predicting out of stock, some warehouse flow forecasting, and then also ultimately also around staff optimization, which leads us into our final example of a customer leveraging the technology of DataRobot, where one of the largest retailers in the world uses DataRobot to solve the specific business problem of recognizing it and forecasting the demand spikes during the seasonality period. This seasonality was specifically related to around Black Friday through the New Year. So through the Christmas and holiday periods and Hanukkah periods all the way through the New Year. And they were able to, with the help of DataRobot, build models quite quickly and subsequently optimize their staffing within fulfillment centers that ultimately created a return on investment of upwards of $3 million per week over the holiday shopping season. At this point in time, that's all I wanted to highlight from a DataRobot perspective, and I'd love to hand it over to Patrick Sifford from ThoughtSpot to highlight a few of them.
Well, thanks a lot, Matt. Some really exciting customer stories there for DataRobot. Now, as for ThoughtSpot, as you would have seen just previously in the demo, we're using simple type ahead search to really bridge the gap between technical and non-technical users, right? Or as we call them, data consumers. And at the same time, we allow for the distribution of AI-driven insights across the firm. And with a very broad set of use cases that we see with our customers globally, I think it's fair to say that we've seen a lot of companies focus on use cases in the procurement and supply chain space, especially during COVID-19 times. It's simple, right? Quick and easy access to data has been more relevant than ever, while obviously navigating the challenges our customers have been facing over the last few months. Specifically, procurement and supply chain professionals from the world's leading brands, and you see some examples there that are referenceable. They use ThoughtSpot to uncover insights around cost efficiency, around quality assurance, delivery and time optimization, as well as risk mitigation, but also, to measure supplier performance and better manage supplier relationships and more on the supply chain side, understand supply and demand, inventory and order data to take better decisions at the end of it, right? Especially also in the context of using our AI-driven insights engine to find insights otherwise hidden in the often sort of like large oceans of data. As an example here, Baker Hughes that you see on the left side, part of GE, there we have about 1,600 procurement professionals that get a 360-degree view of sourcing data, including things like PO spend, receipt spends, payments, invoice holds, and invoice spends across all businesses at a very granular level, right? And with any number of filters. This allows them to do very high-level analysis as well as deep dive into procurement actuals across businesses. For instance, two business companies that ordered the same part from different vendors at different prices can now introduce cost efficiencies by looking at mutual PO spend line items, right? Obviously, both looking back as well as deriving forward-looking expectations. Our main example here in the middle is Chick-fil-A, also a customer in the US. They have been on a mission to streamline and scale their analytics processes for supply chain users and location operators, right? They had calculated that their store managers spend north of 100,000 hours yearly waiting for data to come back to them, and they needed to address that. And with ThoughtSpot, they are expecting to be able to drastically reduce that number. More specifically, supply chain users can now improve their order forecasting with smarter and faster insights into inventory and delivery data, and store operators can now truly have ownership of their location data, allowing them to react to changing business circumstances quickly, as well as to launch new stores more smoothly and to even modernize and simplify the reporting process. Overall, users have been really excited about how easy and quickly questions can be answered, which essentially has inspired their curiosity to learn more about the data they have, finding insights they didn't even know they could look for, and to start being more interactive with data overall. Additionally, while previously many business users didn't quite know where to go find information because there were just too many tools and reports and dashboards and things, ThoughtSpot is now rapidly becoming the go-to place for everyone looking for answers. Now, to close this, while most of our customers start with search and already get significant value from it, as you would have seen in the demo before, many of them get really excited about Spot IQ, our AI-driven insights engine. The ability to automate insights discovery or insights generation and to automatically get tailor-made answers to questions, that's a game changer, right? Questions that hadn't even been asked, and now they're able to find things they didn't even know they wanted. And that has really changed the game in this analytics space, and that's why ThoughtSpot looks at itself as the next generation analytics platform. All right, that's it from my side. Back to Melina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. And we're approaching the very end of the webinar, a very short wrap up. So what we've seen is we've seen a demand prediction demo in DataRobot, as well as we have seen that how you could analyze your procurement data very easily with ThoughtSpot, even if you're not a non-BI or analytics expert. These were just two examples, two use cases, but obviously we could support in any step of the process. Some other examples of use cases you could use for DataRobot and ThoughtSpot for your warehouse optimization, inventory management, supplier assessments, etc. Now, with this, I would like to open up for questions, and as mentioned, feel free to add your questions in the control panel in the questions tab. So we will try to answer all of them now, or if we don't have time for all, we'll come back to you after the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melina. I will, as I have control access to all the questions, there's already been numerous questions that have come through the question control panel, so thank you very much for those questions. Given and conscious of time, we will be asking 3 questions and then ultimately respond to the rest of those questions individually. The first question is related to ThoughtSpot. Does ThoughtSpot sit on top of any type of data source, or how does it have access to the data? I think this question is more for Patrick, if possible.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. Yeah, does it sit on, so the question was, does it sit on top of any type of data source, and how does it have access there? Yeah, so there are 2 ways to consume data from a ThoughtSpot perspective. One is, and let's keep in mind that we really want to focus on this like consumer app type user experience, right? It has to be fast, it has to be performant. So on one hand, while we want to combine different, be able to combine different data sources and potentially do cross context analysis, one way to do it is to bring the data that we want to analyze, extract it from where it is, and bring it into the ThoughtSpot platform. and have it automatically indexed there by our technology stack, and then immediately made searchable. That's one way of doing it. The other option is a very exciting one as well, and it is basically the ability to connect to the more modern cloud data warehouses such as Snowflake, Google BigQuery, Redshift, or even SAP HANA, where the data can reside where it is. These new technology platform, data warehousing platforms, they are much better in terms of performance, so we can actually get to close to the same performance in terms of response times while directly querying the data on these data platforms, right? So those are the two ways of basically using ThoughtSpot. If you would like more detail, I'm happy to obviously deep dive into this in a one-on-one.
Thank you very much, Patrick. The next question is for Lucas. The question or highlights, first comment is, thank you very much for the demonstration of the DataRobot platform. I work for a large retailer where we have thousands of stores and ultimately also thousands of SKUs. Does DataRobot have experience in building predictive models for predicting demand per store, per SKU?
Yeah, absolutely it has. So as you have seen, what I've shown you is building a model on only 10 stores for demonstration purposes, but indeed we have worked with very, very large retailers, some of the largest in the world. And what they typically do is they don't build only one project in DataRobot, they build maybe 100, and that's exactly what automated machine learning can give you, right? You split it out, you distribute all of that compute that is needed, and you get very, very accurate predictions for each kind of segment of your business. And you can split it by category hierarchies or regions, etc. Though there's a few different options available, but the fact that you can experiment very fast and also see what doesn't work very fast and then not go down that route, I think that is really what helps those teams we are working with in getting these more complex problems solved.
Perfect, great, Lucas, really appreciate that answer. And the last question we've got, and there's numerous other questions, but we will get back to the individuals directly with the responses. But the last question is also to Lucas. Given the rise of importance around image analysis, can DataRobot consume images, as within the data set that was demonstrated, there were only text and numbers?
Yeah, good question. So what we do is, as you've seen when I uploaded the data set, DataRobot went away and tried to identify what type of column each of those, what type of data each of those columns were, right? So is it a number, is it text, is it a date? We do support images as well. We also, on top of that, support things like geospatial coordinates, things like latitude, longitude, and then all of this is actually going into the models, and they can make use of this information. So the images are going to be used, and we identify things there. For example, I've worked with a retailer. They wanted to do some categorization of products, and they had pictures of bananas, carrots, that kind of stuff in a store, and DataRobot was able to figure out, all right, if it's round and red, it's most likely a tomato, that kind of thing, right? It works really well, and so it is very flexible in terms of what kind of input features you have, and you can combine them as well.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Yeah, the visual AI components as well as the geospatial components within DataRobot are quite exciting from a DataRobot perspective and some of our customers. That's it for today's webinar. I want to thank, first of all, Lucas, Melina, Patrick for your presentations and your context, and not just the content in itself. For the audience, thank you very much for your patience and attendance. We will be following up directly with the answers to the individual questions, as well as also a survey, and upon request, the recording as well. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day, everyone. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.